What is the economy? If you had to draw a picture of the economy, what would you draw? This is a question that I often ask my students, and I typically get answers like, I draw a building, I draw a business, it's money, it's coins, it's graphs, it's charts, it's taxes, it's government. So I get these kind of answers when I ask students to draw a picture of the economy. So let's take a look at a model or a picture of the economy that explains how everything works. This is called the circular flow model, and it describes the interaction of our key sectors in our economy and the exchange of resources and products for the services that people get for those exchanges of goods and services. So the circular flow model is going to look at key sectors of our economy. Okay, one key sector is called the household sector. So you and I are both part of the household sector. It's individuals or groups of people living together. Then we have the business sector. And the business sector is all the business sectors that are organized and they produce products or services. Now, the household sector owns key resources. The household sector is considered to own all the land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Now, let me clarify that we're looking at a very simplified model. Remember from our previous discussion that a model is a simplification. So we're just making it very simple. So the household sector owns land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, and they sell these resources in what is called the resource market. Sometimes it is also called the factor market. They sell land, labor, capital into the resource market, and businesses buy it. So you do this too. When you go look for a job, you're going to put your resume together and you're going to go to a business and you're going to say, hey, I would like to have a job. You're selling your labor and the business sector is buying that labor from you. And what do they do with that labor, with your labor? Well, they produce things. They produce things and they sell those things in what's called the goods and services market. Sometimes it's called the product market. So you will hear those two terms used interchangeably. Okay, so land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship flow from the household sector to the resource market. It's purchased or bought by the business sector, and then those resources flow into the businesses, and businesses then make products out of the resources that they purchase. So goods and services flow into the goods and services market. What is this abstract goods and services market? That's just a big name that we use to categorize all the stuff that's being sold. Blue jeans, television sets, cars, dental services, when you go to the hair salon, when you go to a lawyer's office, all the stuff that's being sold is put into the goods and services market. And then where does it go? Well, the household sector buys it. And the household sector buys it and then they use it up. Question, how do they buy it? Where do they get the dollars to buy these goods and services? Well, they get those dollars from the business sector. Okay, households consume and dollars flow into the goods and services market, and then those dollars flow in the form of revenue to the business sector, and then the business sector pays rent, wages, interest, and profit, and that flows into the household sector. Okay, let me give you some definitions. The payment for land is always going to be called rent. The payment for labor is called wages. The payment for capital is called interest, and the payment for entrepreneurial ability is called profits. Also remember that when we refer to capital in economics, we're referring to machinery and equipment and tools that help us produce something. So we're referring to physical capital. When we start talking about finance and the financial market, we will talk a little bit about financial capital. But right now, capital means machinery and equipment and tools used to produce something. This is what the businesses need so that they can produce goods and services. When households spend money, that's called consumption. Okay, so household expenditure is called consumption. Sometimes personal consumption expenditures is what you'll see. Then that's going to flow in terms of revenue into the business sector. So you see that we have two flows. This inside flow is a money flow, and the outside flow is a real flow. It's a flow of real products and services and real resources flowing into these markets. So here's a thought experiment for you. What would happen if the household sector stopped buying stuff? Very serious consequences. So think about that. Let me go back one slide. Imagine if the household sector stopped buying items, goods and services. Businesses would have no revenue. And if businesses had no revenue, then they couldn't pay rent, wages, interest, and profit. And then if that happened, that money wouldn't flow to the household sector. And if businesses have no revenue, they can't hire more people. See, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability means that they're probably hiring people and renting properties to try to produce those goods and services. So if people stop consuming, if the household sector stops consuming, businesses don't get revenue. Businesses don't get revenue. They can't pay the rent, wages, interest, and profit. That means they have to lay people off, and businesses are going to start to close. Okay. Of course, if that happens, then the household sector does not get any income. And if the household sector doesn't get income, what happens? They're going to stop consuming. And so we begin to have a downward spiral. Of course, this could go in the opposite direction as well. Consumption increases and revenues increase, and business have to hire more people, they pay more wages, and then income increases. Okay, so this is why this model is called a circular flow model, because it all is interactive. And so if households stop consuming, definitely businesses will be hurt. Let's take a look at what happened between 2019 and the second quarter of 2020. So what I've done on this slide is I've taken gross domestic product. So gross domestic product is the final market value of all goods and services produced in an economy in our domestic boundaries within a given time period. So typically it's within a year, and we measure it every 3 months. And this is done by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. So if we take a look at this chart, we can see that in 2019, some expenditures were higher than others, and in 2020, there were different expenditures. And this is principally due to the coronavirus, or COVID-19. As you already know, we are in this pandemic, and because of that, that is changing household consumption expenditure. And a lot of businesses have closed because people are not spending as much as they did. So let's take a look and see what the typical household buys. Motor vehicles and parts, slight drop in 2020. Furnishings, durable goods, and household equipment stayed about the same. Recreational goods and vehicles went up. Food, beverages purchased for off-premise consumption. This is like grocery stores. Grocery store sales went up. Clothing and footwear went down. Gasoline and other energy goods went down. We can see that expenditures on housing and utilities, a slight increase. Healthcare, big drop in the second quarter. principally because people are probably a little bit worried about going to seek medical care during these times. Transportation services down, recreation services way down, food services and accommodations like restaurants, sales are down, and financial services about the same, and the expenditure on other services went down as well. Now, this is the second quarter of 2020. We have to capture also what happened in the first quarter, but this is where we went into lockdown, and you can see that reduced consumption from the household sector probably reduced our gross, well, actually did reduce our gross domestic product significantly, and we will take a look at that later on. But if we have reduced consumption, we're also going to have reduced business activity and increased unemployment. So back to our circular flow model. This is a simple model, but as you know, we also have other players in the market. What is the role of government? Well, government, we put right in the middle. And government steps in to correct for market inefficiencies, which is what we had discussed before. So what is happening here? Well, we have government coming in, and government spends on goods and services. Okay, they buy airplanes and missiles, and they buy buildings and so on. So government spends in the goods and services market, and products and goods and services flow to the government. Government also hires land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, and they pay that in rent, wages, interest, and profits. So the government becomes part of that circular flow model. How do they pay for this? Well, they pay for this with taxes. The household sector pays taxes, and the business sector pays taxes. Household sectors pay taxes, and then in addition to government spending, government takes this money and transfers it back to the household sector in the form of items such as Social Security benefits, supplemental nutrition and assistance programs, unemployment insurance, veterans benefits. All of those are called transfer payments. Government gets taxes from the business sector. And what does the business sector get in exchange? Now, I put subsidies in here, which is to help businesses produce certain items, but government also provides business with a stable environment and with the protection of the rule of law, where contracts are respected and businesses have recourse in the event of a failure to comply with contracts. So government provides the institutional infrastructure for businesses to operate successfully in a mixed market economy. So when we talk about government, we have three levels of government. We have the federal government, which is President and Congress, and the federal government spends on goods and services, Social Security, and welfare payments. It transfers money to the state and local government, and the federal government gets its money from personal income taxes, business taxes, Social Security taxes, and Medicare taxes, and I am sure many other types of taxes. Then we have state government, and that's headed up by the governor and your state representatives. And the state government spends on goods and services like roads, bridges, infrastructure, school districts, and they also have some welfare benefits. Our state government, which is Texas, gets its money from sales tax, and in other states, some states get property taxes and income taxes, but the state of Texas does not have property taxes on households and does not have income taxes on households. And finally, at the local level, the mayor and city council is our local government. And local government also spends on goods and services, police and fire protection, local infrastructure. Local government also includes some jurisdictions that you may not have considered, like the county of El Paso Community College, the independent school districts, and I believe the hospital district as well. So we have three levels of government. And finally, the last sector in our economy is the foreign sector. Why? Because we sell products to other countries and they sell products to us. So we have to take into account the foreign sector. Later on, we are going to be adding in the financial market and talking about that, but that'll come in later chapters. So in conclusion, circular flow model is a picture of the economy. It describes the interaction of the key sectors in our economy and the exchange of resources, of products and services for money. We have 4 sectors: the household sector, the business sector, the government sector, and the foreign sector. We also have 2 markets. We have the resource market and the product market. And later on, we will be adding into this the financial services market. So keep these things in mind. I have posted handouts in our course shell that have pictures of the circular flow model. And you are expected to know the circular flow model, the sectors, the markets, the flows, and understand how all of this works. So please pull these handouts off of your course shell, print them out or draw them out, and you need to know this model because we are going to be referring to it again when we get into later work discussing economic growth and gross domestic product.